Welcome to Trending Unpacked, the show that dives into what the world's been searching for and why it matters. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a name that's been, well, pretty much lighting up our feeds and search bars, Sydney Sweeney. Specifically, her latest collaboration with American Eagle has gone absolutely viral, and it's just a fascinating case study in how brands are connecting with Gen Z today.
Oh, it truly is. And this isn't just, another celebrity endorsement. It feels bigger. It's really about a brand, American Eagle kind of reclaiming its cool factor. And it's wrapped up in this cultural moment that tells us a lot about, well, nostalgia, authenticity, and how social media totally shapes our perceptions of fashion now. We've been looking at a whole stack of sources from the official campaign notes to some pretty critical analyses. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack. It reveals both this huge success story and some surprisingly complex cultural conversations happening around it.
Okay, so let's get into it. American Eagle. I mean, for a lot of us, that name brings back memories of, let's just say, a different era of mall culture, maybe slightly less. Cool. How did they manage to pull off this magic trick? Becoming the Gen Z sensation, it feels like it happened overnight. Sydney Sweeney's American Eagle campaign. What exactly made it just explode across TikTok, Instagram, fashion blogs? What was that initial buzz really all about?
Yeah, the overnight feeling is real, isn't
Well, it
it?
felt like it was everywhere, instantly. You couldn't scroll for more than like a minute without seeing a clip of her in that retro denim or, a fan recreating one of those looks. Our sources definitely suggest it was immediate, a resounding success right from the get-go.
Absolutely. The immediate virality was pretty astonishing. And what's fascinating here, looking at the sources, is how strategically it taps into several really powerful cultural currents. It hit hard. This wasn't just luck. It seems like a very carefully crafted blend of aesthetics that resonated deeply with the current, zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Almost like hitting a perfect chord. The campaign deliberately and quite masterfully, I think, blends late 2000s nostalgia, that very distinct Y2K revival aesthetic we're seeing everywhere, and a classic, comfortable, kind of casual Americana vibe.
That blend feels really key. It's not just one thing.
Exactly. And this multi-layered approach to nostalgia, it isn't just a visual trick. Our sources suggest it taps into something deeper for Gen Z. For many of them who maybe experienced these eras more through childhood memories or social media archives, Y2K and the late 2000s aren't just fashion trends. They almost represent this curated fantasy of a simpler time,
Yeah.
a comfortable escape. And the campaign does a great job presenting this past not as some dusty old thing, but as this vibrant, reinterpretable language. It speaks to their desire for comfort, for individuality, and maybe even a subtle rebellion against the super polished digital present.
Right, like an antidote to the perfect Instagram feed.
Precisely. And you see this manifest in the details, the soft vintage textures that feel instantly familiar, kind of cozy, the oversized flannels that give off this sense of carefree ease, and the retro denim, which nods to a classic shape but, crucially, has a modern update. This blending provides a visual language that's comfortable but still stylish, and it resonates broadly. Different parts of Gen Z might connect with different aspects. One person loves the Y2K, another the flannel, but they all find something relatable in the overall picture. It's really an embrace of comfort that's still undeniably stylish.
Okay, and it really feels like American Eagle isn't just, hopping on a bandwagon here. They've made a significant pivot, wouldn't you say? Because, like we said, for so many of us, AE evokes those very specific high school memories, maybe those slightly cringy mall store vibes from the mid-2000s. This campaign feels like a very clear strategic shift away from all that.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. This campaign isn't just like a seasonal refresh. It feels much more foundational. A reorientation for American Eagle. Our sources confirm they've clearly moved towards building an identity rooted in authenticity, inclusivity, and this is crucial, influencer-led storytelling. But okay, what does authenticity actually mean for a huge multi-million-dollar brand like AE? It's a bit of a tightrope walk, isn't it?
Yeah, it can feel pretty manufactured sometimes.
Right. And our sources suggest it means a deliberate move away from that unreachable ideal. The supermodel look towards imagery that reflects the consumer's everyday reality more. Think less high-fashion runway, more real-life scrolling on your phone. This involves showing diverse body types, using shots that feel more candid, less staged, and showcasing clothes that genuinely look lived in and comfortable, almost as if the person wearing them styled it themselves, not some high-end fashion team. It's about this perceived authenticity, this feeling that the brand actually sees and gets its audience, rather than just dictating trends down to them.
And that shift to influencer-led storytelling. How does that differ from just, sticking a celebrity in an ad?
That's a great question, and it's a really noteworthy shift. Unlike traditional advertising, which often relied on those super polished, often unattainable models and very direct sales pitches, influencer-led storytelling leverages figures like Sydney Sweeney, who have already built these genuine, or at least perceived as genuine, connections with their audience. They become storytellers for the brand, not just faces on a billboard. You see this really clearly in the DIY-inspired styling of Sweeney's shoot. It gives it this air of personal touch, accessibility. It's less about aspirational perfection and more about self-expression, ease. And this, combined with that small-town but chic vibe the campaign has, really emphasizes that approachable, kind of down-to-earth aesthetic that Gen Z seems to value so much.
So it's like saying style isn't about fancy labels, it's about you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It suggests that style isn't confined to exclusive labels or high-fashion runways, but it's about personal comfort and expressing who you are, wherever you happen to be. This whole approach allows AE to kind of shed that somewhat stale mall store image and reconnect with a generation that really prioritizes genuine connection and personal expression over, say, manufactured glamour.
Okay, so shifting focus a bit to Sydney Sweeney herself. It's clear she's way more than just an actress now. She feels like a legitimate cultural force, especially for Gen Z. Her presence is just so pervasive, isn't it? Not just in fashion. What is it about her that makes her such an effective ambassador for a brand like American Eagle, do you think?
You're absolutely right. Her appeal is incredibly broad, and it definitely stems from her significant presence across popular culture, way beyond just fashion shoots. She's not just, a model they hired. She's an actress who's gained serious critical acclaim and built a massive fan base through her roles. Think about her breakout work in Euphoria. I mean, that show is a massive cultural touchstone for Gen Z.
Huge, yeah.
Or even her more recent rom-com, Anyone But You, which really showed her range and, frankly, her mainstream appeal. These diverse roles expose her to this huge audience and let her build a really multifaceted persona. People connect with the character she plays, and that connection then translates into an affinity for her as a public figure. So when she shows up in an American Eagle campaign, it's not just some actress posing. It's Sydney Sweeney, the person they feel like they know from these other shows and movies, endorsing something.
Right, there's a pre-existing relationship almost.
Exactly, and that seriously amplifies her influence in the fashion space because she brings this level of trust and familiarity from her acting career right into her endorsements.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, her off-screen persona feels crucial to understanding her impact too. It feels very carefully managed, yet somehow it also reads as authentic, which seems to be the magic formula for connecting with this generation.
It absolutely is key, and it's done very effectively. It's that delicate balance between having a public persona and maintaining that perceived genuineness. Her off-screen image is consistently portrayed and perceived as relatable, body-positive, and vintage-loving. So let's break down what relatability really means for a Gen Z audience today. It's not about being perfect or flawless, is it? No, definitely not. It's almost the opposite.
Right. It's about perceived authenticity. It's about someone who seems genuine, who maybe shares similar interests, who isn't afraid to be themselves, flaws and all. Maybe Sydney Sweeney often shares glimpses of her everyday life, like her passion for restoring classic cars, which is kind of cool and unexpected.
Yeah, the car thing is great. It is. And her more casual, behind-the-scenes side, all that makes her feel genuinely accessible, not like some distant star. Then there's the crucial element of body positivity. Our sources really highlight this. In an era where discussions around body image and inclusivity are just massive, her comfortable and confident presence in campaigns resonates powerfully. She embodies a more realistic, perhaps, yet still aspirational body type, and that's incredibly important for young women consuming media today.
It's a huge departure from the older model of celebrity endorsements, right? The
Right.
super thin, often unattainable look.
A massive departure. That older model often feature highly stylized, often very underweight models, which Gen Z has increasingly rejected. Her approach signals this move towards celebrating more diverse body shapes, which aligns perfectly with AE's stated inclusive messaging. And then her vintage-loving side fits perfectly with the nostalgia trend we were just talking about. Whether it's her classic car collection or her personal style choices, she often incorporates vintage elements. This just further cements her connection to those retro aesthetics that American Eagle is leaning into so heavily. So this deliberate cultivation of a down-to-earth, genuine image, it's a stark contrast to those older models of celebrity endorsement that relied on an air of unattainable glamour. Gen Z values this approach precisely because it feels less like a performance and more like a genuine recommendation from someone they feel they can trust, almost like a friend sharing something cool they found.
So she's definitely not just a pretty face in an ad. She seems to be part of this new wave of fashion ambassadors, almost embodying this real girl energy phenomenon we hear about. It feels like brands are really catching on to this, moving away from that hyper aspirational, untouchable model image.
Precisely. She fits perfectly into this emerging trend of new wave fashion ambassadors who embody what our sources are calling real girl energy.
Ugh.
And in the fashion context, what that means is moving away from the highly polished, often airbrushed perfection that defined models and celebs of previous decades. Instead, it's all about approachability, a less filtered look, and a sense of genuine connection. It's about someone who looks like they could be your cool older sister, maybe, or a friend, rather than some untouchable fantasy figure on a pedestal.
It feels more like a conversation, less like being sold to.
Exactly. This approach fosters a deeper bond with the audience because it feels more authentic and less manufactured. It's about aspiration through relatability rather than aspiration through unattainability. That's a key shift. And you see her embodying this across the board, which really speaks to her immense versatility and broad appeal as an influencer. She's not just the face of American Eagle, remember. She's been the face of multiple major campaigns recently in 2024, 2025. We're talking beauty brands like Laneige, even automotive brands like Ford, and high fashion labels like Miu Miu.
Wow, that's quite a range, from Ford trucks to Miu Miu.
It's an incredible range, and it really showcases how brands from totally diverse sectors see her as someone who can genuinely connect with their target demographic. Largely the thinking goes because she appeals to fans who are seeking that genuineness over manufactured perfection. And this is a critical point when we look at the broader trend of, these mall brands reinventing themselves for social media relevance. They're choosing ambassadors who truly resonate because authenticity, or at least the perception of it, is absolute currency in the digital age. It's about finding that spokesperson who can bridge the gap between a brand's maybe slightly dusty heritage and its new digitally native audience, someone who makes the brand feel fresh and current without completely abandoning its roots.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. American Eagle. Like we've touched on, for many of us, it might evoke those memories of brightly lit stores, ubiquitous denim, maybe logo tees, almost synonymous with a certain mall store cringe reputation for a while there. How exactly did they manage this pivot to TikTok-friendly cool? It feels like a monumental shift for a brand that, let's be honest, felt somewhat stagnant for a long time.
It truly was a monumental shift, and it's just such a fascinating case study in brand reinvention. American Eagle's transformation from that mall store cringe reputation, as you put it, to a TikTok-friendly cool brand isn't just like a simple marketing facelift. Our sources really indicate it's a fundamental realignment with a whole new generation's preferences and, crucially, the platforms they actually live on. The significance of this shift lies in their apparent willingness to completely shed an outdated image and really embrace the culture of today's youth. It's almost like they underwent a complete brand personality transplant.
So what was it about TikTok specifically? Why was that the right platform for this reinvention?
Well, TikTok thrives on certain things, right? Authenticity or perceived authenticity, short form, highly visual video, and incredibly rapid trend cycles. It's a place where trends often bubble up organically, driven by users themselves, and with that super polished perfection often takes a back seat to relatable, maybe even slightly messy, unfiltered content. AE tapped directly into this. They created a campaign that felt less like a traditional advertisement and more like organic content that could just seamlessly integrate into a user's For You page. The specific stylistic choices of the campaign are absolutely key here. The retro denim we mentioned. It's not just a throwback, it's designed with modern sensibilities, modern cuts. The oversized flannels, the soft vintage textures, they all contribute to this comfortable, lived-in, yet still stylish look that perfectly aligns with TikTok's dominant aesthetic, casual, effortless cool.
It's about looking good without looking like you tried too hard.
Exactly.
It's about clothes that you can actually move in, that look good without fuss, and that seamlessly integrate into the kind of everyday fashion content, the GRWMs, the OTDs that dominate the platform. They clearly understood that to be TikTok-friendly, they had to be less about aspirational perfection and much more about accessible, relatable style. And that strategy made the brand feel approachable and genuinely part of the Gen Z conversation, not just shouting at it from the outside.
And it seems like they've managed to strike that really delicate balance between the past nostalgia and, well, current practicality, which raises an important question. How are they leveraging these nostalgic aesthetics while also making sure the clothes have contemporary fits? Because it's easy to do a retro campaign visually, but making the clothes actually wearable and desirable for a diverse audience today.
That's the real trick. I mean, I remember trying on American Eagle jeans back in high school. Let's just say fit inclusivity wasn't exactly the top priority back then. So how did they crack that code now?
That's precisely the challenge, isn't it? And it's where, according to our sources, the campaign truly shines. The campaign is specifically praised for blending early 2000s aesthetics with modern fit inclusivity. And that is absolutely not an easy feat, because purely nostalgic fits, if you just replicate them exactly, can often be really uncomfortable or just unflattering by today's standards and body shapes.
Yeah, those ultra low-rise jeans. Maybe not for everyone now.
Exactly. So what about the sort of technical side of making nostalgia wearable? Our sources suggest that designers at American Eagle meticulously re-engineered these classic pieces. Take those low-rise jeans, a hallmark of Y2K fashion. Instead of a direct, often unforgiving replication, they've apparently incorporated modern fabric blends with strategic stretch. And they've made subtle but important adjustments to the rise itself, the hip-to-waist ratio, things like that. This isn't just about offering a wider range of sizes, although that's part of it. It's about using what they call a modernized fit block. Basically, updating the fundamental pattern to ensure comfort and a flattering drape across a much wider array of Gen Z body types. This makes it truly inclusive, which, as we know, is absolutely paramount for this generation. Fit inclusivity for a brand like AE today means designing garments that cater to a broad range of body types, making sure everyone can find something that makes them feel comfortable and confident.
Because Gen Z expects that now, right? They grew up with that conversation.
They absolutely did. They grew up in an era where body positivity is a significant cultural conversation, and they expect brands to reflect that in their actual products, not just their marketing slogans. They prioritize comfort and self-expression over maybe more rigid, older fashion norms. And that DIY-inspired styling we mentioned earlier with its small-town but chic vibe, that further reflects this authentic, accessible approach. It suggests that these clothes are meant to be worn, maybe customized, styled in a way that feels unique to the individual, rather than being presented as some prescriptive, high-fashion, wear it exactly like this look. This resonates deeply with Gen Z, who value personal expression and often curate their own unique styles by mixing new stuff with vintage finds. It's about personalizing fashion, not just consuming it off a rack.
Okay, but the big question. Are these efforts actually paying off beyond the buzz? What does the data tell us about American Eagle actually winning Gen Z's trust, maybe even stealing share from trendier or even high-end labels? Because a pivot like this, it needs to show tangible results, right? Not just good vibes or a few viral clips on TikTok.
Right. You need the receipts, as they say. And the data tells a really compelling story of success. It's definitely not just good vibes. There are concrete metrics. American Eagle saw a remarkable 30% surge in search interest in the month following the campaign launch. Now, that metric is incredibly significant because it's a direct indicator of renewed curiosity and active engagement from their target audience. It means people were actively looking them up.
30% is huge.
It's huge. And our sources indicate this isn't just like a fleeting spike. It represents a fundamental shift in what analysts call consideration metrics, that active curiosity that comes before a purchase. Some analyst reports we looked at suggest this could translate into something like a potential 15% increase in brand recall among the 18 to 24 demographic just within the last quarter. This is what we call earned media and earned interest. It's far more valuable and impactful than just paying for impressions because it stems from genuine consumer interest bubbling up.
And what about the reactions? Are people actually liking it, buying it?
Yes. Beyond the numbers, the qualitative reactions from Gen Z seem overwhelmingly positive, which reinforces this whole comeback narrative. There's been a significant amount of positive buzz, specifically around Sydney Sweeney's relatability and her perceived body positivity, which is translated directly into how the brand itself is viewed. And you're seeing fashion influencers who are absolutely key tastemakers for Gen Z, now proudly incorporating American Eagle pieces into their thrifted Y2K hauls.
Oh, that is huge. Putting AE next to actual vintage finds.
It's massive, because it completely legitimizes the brand within the very communities that drive trends. When an influencer, known for their curated, authentic style, includes AE alongside genuine vintage pieces, it sends a powerful signal. This brand is genuinely cool again, not just a brand trying to be cool. And all this has led to American Eagle being widely considered a comeback brand among that crucial 18 to 30 age demographic. It really shows how a strategic ambassador choice, perfectly aligned aesthetic choices tapping into current trends, and a strong, authentic social media presence can truly translate into tangible brand resurgence and renewed consumer interest. It's almost like a blueprint for how a legacy brand can not just survive, but actually thrive in this rapidly evolving market driven by social media and Gen Z habits.
It really feels like this campaign was just custom built for social media, doesn't it? Like it wasn't just on TikTok and Instagram. It felt like it was of TikTok and Instagram, native to it. How did those platforms, specifically TikTok and Instagram Reels, amplify the campaign's reach and impact so effectively? Because it's one thing to have a great ad campaign, but it's a whole other thing to have it truly go viral and become this kind of cultural phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely. It was definitely designed with social media's native formats baked right in from the start. The way the campaign was amplified through all these different social media content formats, like a textbook example of how to achieve organic, widespread reach today. We saw this absolute explosion of user-generated content, or UGC, which is basically the holy grail for brands now. And crucially, this wasn't just passive viewing, it was active participation. The campaign harnessed the power of the audience as creators.
So people weren't just watching, they were making stuff about it.
Exactly. We saw a massive surge in hauls, where users buy the AE pieces featured in the campaign, then film themselves trying them on, showing off their purchases, giving their honest reactions. That creates this sense of peer endorsement that's just incredibly powerful.
Well,
Way more persuasive for many people than a traditional celebrity ad.
mm.
Then there were countless recreations where users would try to mimic Sydney Sweeney's looks from the campaign photos or videos, either trying to get it perfect or putting their own unique spin on it using the AE clothes. And finally, styling videos became super prevalent, with users showing all these different ways to wear the new AE pieces, demonstrating their versatility and how they fit into an actual everyday wardrobe. These formats encourage active participation and organic spread. They turn viewers into creators and effectively brand advocates.
And the numbers on that engagement were pretty wild, right? Staggering. TikTok clips of the official shoot and all the fan recreations combined. Our sources say they amassed over 50 million combined views. And remember, this isn't views generated by AE paying for ads. This is largely organic, user-driven content that turns viewers into active creators and advocates for the brand. It's just a far more powerful and, frankly, trustworthy form of advertising because it comes from the audience itself. It creates this ripple effect of engagement and interest that traditional advertising could only dream of achieving. It's really a testament to how effective the campaign was in inspiring genuine interaction and transforming consumers into collaborators.
And what's really fascinating here is how this user engagement then seems to morph into these broader fashion movements, like this idea of Sydney core. It feels like it's more than just a hashtag. It's like a whole aesthetic that's taken on a life of its own beyond just American Eagle. It's exactly right. The emergence of Sydney core isn't just some catchy name floating around. It's a tangible representation of how celebrity influence, when combined with the rapid dissemination power of social media, can coalesce into a bona fide fashion mood board. And in a digital fashion context, what is a mood board? It's basically a collective visual language, a shared aesthetic that people draw inspiration from. So Sydney core embodies the specific aesthetics and the feeling inspired by Sweeney's campaign. That blend of late 2000s and Y2K nostalgia, the casual Americana, the comfortable yet chic vibe, and that emphasis on relatability and body positivity we talked about.
So it's like the campaign didn't just sell clothes, it sold an entire vibe.
Precisely. It signifies that the campaign didn't just sell jeans and flannels. It ignited a broader style conversation. It became a reference point, a source of inspiration for how people want to dress and maybe even present themselves online, permeating not just fashion, but potentially beauty trends and lifestyle content too. This goes way beyond just buying American Eagle products. It's about adopting an entire sensibility, a whole look and feel. We could speculate that this whole phenomenon of these micro-trends rapidly becoming mainstream is really a defining characteristic of fashion in the social media age. A celebrity endorses something effectively, users react, they create content around it, and suddenly an entire aesthetic movement is born, spreading like wildfire across platforms. It just shows the incredible power of a cohesive brand message when combined with the amplification capabilities of these highly engaged online communities.
Okay, stepping back even further then, beyond just Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle, what does this whole episode tell us about the broader trend of nostalgia-driven fashion? And maybe more importantly, the rebranding of these old-school labels. Is this just a one-off success story, or is it genuinely a blueprint for how legacy brands can truly regain relevance in this new digital landscape?
I think this campaign really exemplifies a much broader cultural trend we're seeing right now. There's a significant wave of nostalgia-driven fashion, absolutely. And we're also seeing these successful and sometimes less successful rebranding efforts of many old-school labels trying to capture that Gen Z magic. Now, why is nostalgia so potent, particularly for Gen Z? Well, it could be a few things, right? Maybe it's a craving for simpler times in what feels like a pretty complex and chaotic world. Maybe it's a way to connect with past aesthetics, but through a contemporary lens. Or maybe it's just the cyclical nature of fashion, but accelerated dramatically by social media's ability to constantly resurface and recontextualize old trends.
And for Gen Z, it's maybe less nostalgia and more discovery, since they didn't live through it the first time as adults.
That's a great point. For Gen Z, who maybe didn't experience these eras as adults, it's not pure nostalgia in the same way it might be for millennials, for example. It's more like a discovery and a reimagining of aesthetics that feel fresh, exciting, and uniquely theirs to interpret. It's a way to feel connected to a past without being strictly beholden to its original context. And yes, American Eagle's success absolutely serves as a kind of blueprint for other established brands looking to regain relevance in this rapidly evolving market. Their strategy shows that it's definitely not enough to just, update your logo or throw some new products out there. You need a more complete overhaul. That includes identifying a highly relatable and genuinely influential ambassador, meticulously crafting an aesthetic that resonates with current youth trends, crucially blending nostalgia with modern sensibilities and fit, prioritizing inclusivity in both design and messaging, and, absolutely critically, building a social media strategy that doesn't just broadcast, but actually encourages user participation and organic content creation.
So it's about building a community, not just selling stuff.
Exactly. It's about understanding that Gen Z consumers are often looking for authenticity, value, and connection, not just transactional purchases. By integrating all these elements, brands can successfully navigate the tricky social media landscape and reconnect with a demographic that holds immense purchasing power and cultural influence. This isn't just about selling clothes anymore. It's about selling a lifestyle, an identity, a feeling that Gen Z wants to embody and share.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the incredible viral success, the brilliant strategy, the positive reception. But while that success is undeniable, some of our sources offer a more critical, perhaps more nuanced perspective. And it feels crucial to consider that for a full picture, right? It's important to acknowledge that not all reactions to the campaign have been uniformly positive. What does this deeper dive reveal about some of the maybe more complex cultural conversations this campaign has sparked?
Yes, and this is where it gets quite complex. This success story exists alongside some significant critiques. It definitely raises important questions about the underlying messaging of the campaign, whether that messaging was intentional or not, and how it's being interpreted through different critical lenses. One of our key sources cites Jane Cunningham, who co-authored a book called Brandsplaining: Why Marketing is Still Sexist and How to Fix It. And Cunningham makes a pretty pointed statement. She says that for American Eagle, a brand whose largest demographic is young women, quote, to tailor their campaign to the male gaze seems retrograde, if not downright creepy.
Okay, the male gaze. Can you unpack that a bit? It's a term we hear, but what does it mean specifically in this context?
Right. So the male gaze is a concept from media theory, basically referring to a particular way women are often depicted in visual media. It suggests that women are frequently presented not as active subjects with their own stories and agency, but primarily as objects positioned for the pleasure or approval of a presumed masculine heterosexual viewer. So when a campaign that's targeting young women appears to frame its imagery through this lens, focusing heavily on certain types of poses, angles, or levels of sexualization, critics argue it can implicitly reinforce traditional gender power dynamics. It potentially undermines messages of female agency and self-expression, regardless of the model's own intentions or the brand's stated goals about empowerment or inclusivity. It's really about how the imagery is constructed and what it implicitly communicates about who the intended audience or beneficiary of that image really is.
And the source connects this specific critique to something broader.
Yes. This specific criticism from Cunningham is then connected by our sources to what they describe as a broader cultural shift happening in the U.S. They suggest we might be witnessing a cultural shift centering whiteness as well as more conservative gender roles. The implication here is that the campaign's visual framing might inadvertently or perhaps even deliberately, according to these critics, play into these wider societal currents that some observers view as regressive.
And there's another perspective from Halliday that connects this campaign to even wider societal issues. That feels like a pretty heavy claim to unpack, especially reporting impartially.
It is a significant claim, And yes, our sources introduce Halliday's perspective, which explicitly links the campaign to an even broader cultural phenomenon. Halliday, according to the source material, suggests this is part of a wider cultural shift that is about recentering whiteness as what America is and who Americans look like.
This is a major socio-political commentary presented in our sources, suggesting that certain visual campaigns, potentially including this one, might contribute, intentionally or not, to a narrowing definition of American identity and who is considered visually ideal or central.
And Halliday offers specific examples or factors feeding into this. Yes. The source outlines Halliday's specific points articulating this further. It links the MAGA movement, for example, with promoting what's termed a soft eugenics way of thinking. Now, soft eugenics here, as the source explains it, isn't about historical coercive state policies. It's described as a more subtle, pervasive cultural pressure. It implies a societal trend that implicitly or explicitly valorizes certain physical attributes, like specific body types or racial features, and certain traditional societal roles as being ideal, thereby subtly marginalizing or devaluing others who don't fit that mold. Halliday argues that in 2025, new factors are reinforcing some old stereotypes. The source mentions, for instance, the widespread rise of GLP-1 medications for weight loss, which are seen as promoting a very specific thin body type ideal, and also points to record high unemployment rates among black women in the U.S. These factors, according to Halliday's perspective in the source, contribute to an environment where certain physical looks and societal roles are implicitly prioritized, shaping who is perceived as ideal or central in American society, and potentially influencing how fashion and bodies are presented in media.
And the source gives other examples from the fashion world reflecting this.
Yes, to illustrate this perceived wider regression in fashion imagery, the source notes the reemergence of figures like the blacklisted photographer Terry Richardson. Despite past controversies involving serious allegations of sexual misconduct, he is apparently shooting again for magazines and brands. Similarly, Dov Charney, who was ousted as CEO of American Apparel amid similar allegations, is now creating content for his new brand. And according to our sources, this new content resembles the heavily sexualized naughty style of his former brand's advertising, which was itself highly controversial. These examples, presented alongside the critique of the American Eagle campaign, are used by the source to argue that there might be a broader societal lean towards potentially problematic or regressive imagery in fashion right now.
It's definitely a complex landscape, especially thinking about how Gen Z themselves interact with all this imagery. What does Cunningham say about that?
Well, Cunningham also points out, according to the source, that many Gen Zers are constantly fed what she calls a hypersexualized visual diet through social media. And because of this constant exposure, they may actually buy into these kinds of strategies, perhaps seeing them as normal or even desirable. This raises a really important and nuanced question about consumer agency versus media influence. It's a question of, is Gen Z truly owning their sexuality by being overtly sexual in their self-presentation, making an empowered choice? Or are they perhaps internalizing external pressures from a media environment that's just saturated with this kind of imagery?
So empowerment versus assimilation, almost.
That's a good way to put it. It's a central debate highlighted in these critical sources. On one hand, the idea of owning sexuality implies a conscious, empowered choice to express oneself freely, a reclamation of agency over one's own body and image. But on the other hand, if the dominant visual language on social media is hypersexualized, then embracing that aesthetic might also be seen, by some critics, as a form of assimilation or conforming to expectations, even if it feels like empowerment from within that generation. This is really where critical thinking comes in for us, and for you, the listener, prompting consideration of these different viewpoints without us necessarily endorsing one over the other. We're reporting what the sources argue.
Does the source mention other figures facing similar critiques?
Yes, it provides another comparative case. The pop star Sabrina Carpenter. The source notes that she has also been accused of catering to the heterosexual male gaze in some of her recent music videos, performances, and visual content. This suggests that the criticism isn't necessarily isolated just to the American Eagle campaign, or Sydney Sweeney specifically. Instead, it points to a broader cultural discussion happening right now around how young women, especially those in the public eye, are presented and perceived in today's digital and media landscape. It really highlights the complexities of navigating identity, expression, and commerce within a generation that grew up online, constantly exposed to and often contributing to this incredibly rich but sometimes contradictory visual culture. It forces us all to ask, perhaps, where does genuine self-empowerment end and subtle societal pressure or even cynical marketing begin?
Okay, so pulling this all together, what does this mean for Sydney Sweeney, for American Eagle, and maybe for the future of fashion marketing more broadly? We've explored this incredible viral success driven by smart use of nostalgia and authenticity. And then we've taken this necessary deeper look at some of the really critical cultural conversations this campaign has sparked conversations about representation, the male gaze, and maybe even wider societal trends. It's a fascinating and yet at times uncomfortable duality that seems to define so much of modern brand messaging.
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it just perfectly highlights the incredibly multifaceted nature of modern branding and celebrity influence. A single campaign can simultaneously be a massive commercial success, hitting all the right notes with its target demographic, becoming a significant cultural touchstone, while also raising these really critical, sometimes troubling questions about representation, about the underlying messages being sent, and about broader societal trends. It really pushes us, and hopefully you, listening, to consider not just what is popular, but why it's popular, and what other narratives, what other interpretations might be at play beneath the surface of that glossy, successful campaign image. It forces us to look beyond just the immediate success metrics, beyond the sales figures and the view count, and really delve into the deeper cultural implications. Understanding that fashion at its core is almost always a reflection, sometimes distorted, sometimes direct, of our societal values, our ideals, and also our anxieties.
That was a truly fascinating deep dive into a topic that's clearly got layers upon layers. And it leaves us with some big questions, doesn't it? Like, how do we, as consumers navigating this complex media world, evaluate these things? How do we engage with a campaign that can be seen simultaneously as, a triumph of modern marketing and potentially a reflection of troubling societal shifts? And maybe even how much agency do individual brands and we as consumers truly have in shaping or resisting these broader cultural currents? Definitely something to mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sources that shape our understanding of the world. Next time on Trending Unpacked, Lyme Disease is back in the headlines. We explore why search interest is spiking, the rise in tick-borne illnesses, and how climate shifts are quietly reshaping public health. Until then, keep digging into what matters.